right, guys, and welcome to Word War Debate. I'm Sam Tripoli. We are live from the Wise Wolf Gold and Silver Analyst Desk. I'm proud to be joined from your left, Kyla Turner, and the one and only, the man with the abs, Gavin McGinnis. Thank you guys so much. Welcome, guys. Welcome. We are live. We have a packed house here today. We just want to say sorry for starting a little late. You know, there's a saying in recovery, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans, okay? So here we are, and enough of us. We got a great show for you. I just want to shoot down to our moderator, the best-looking guy I know, Ben Swan.
Hey, how you guys doing? You guys ready to do this? Have you waited long enough? My voice, you're gonna have to forgive me, man. My voice has been going out for 2 days, so I'm gonna have to be a little more Vince McMahon, a little more growly than normal. But it's great to have you guys here. You love Atlantic City? Come on. They can't see it at home. Do you love Atlantic City? Yeah, it's great. We're excited, guys. Yeah, it's fantastic. It's freezing cold outside, but it's good in here. It's good in here. Well, we want to welcome you guys to Word War Debate. There's so much that we want to talk to you about because this is going to be a whole new format, a whole new way of doing debate. It's going to be a great day. It's going to be a long afternoon and evening of great ideas and thoughts, and we're going to pull all this together for you in a great format. So let me break down for you guys a little bit about how this looks, okay? The format is pretty simple here. The analysts are going to break down for each debate for you beforehand, and then we're going to have the audience vote on who they thought were doing the better argument. You guys watch online debates? You're pros at this by now? You yell at your phone when you're watching them sometimes? Yeah, you do. Well, the difference is when you watch those, nobody cares what you think. Here we do. So you guys get a chance to vote, and for those who are watching online at home, you also will get a chance to vote on who you think did better in these debates. So that's going to be one thing that's very different about all this, okay? Then we're looking at the structure, okay? So here's how it works. The first two debates that we have today are going to be 4 rounds each. The openings have an open debate, then there's the full open debate, and then, of course, we'll have the closing. And then we open it up to the audience, and we'll get 2 questions from audience members who will be randomly selected by moi to be able to ask a question of the debaters. And then after that, you guys will vote on who you think did the best. So let's talk about the first card, and I'm going to toss it back up to Sam. Sam, you got the first card. Who you got?
Ryan, Mullally versus Pisco, Liddy, and we're going to be debating Birthright Citizenship. I'm going to start with Kyla. What are your thoughts on this debate and the subject in general?
Well, I'm excited. We have 2 lawyers, so they're coming very informed on this topic. This is fundamentally about law and about how we interpret the Constitution. So I'm really excited to have 2 informed left versus right lawyers who are going to be getting into what I hope is the nitty-gritty of birthright citizenship. I'm sure I'm going to learn a lot. I imagine all of us on the panel will learn a lot from our 2 contestants.
I'm very excited too. Fun fact, I'm 19-3 in traffic court, just so you know. Gavin, what are your thoughts? I can't wait to hear this on birthright citizenship. If you're here, you get born, are you a citizen? What are your thoughts?
I think it's a great concept that's been abused by immigrants. I think Chinese people come down here, they have a bunch of babies, and then they leave.
They do leave. They really do leave.
They fly in at 9 months pregnant, have the baby, and then take off. So I was just talking to those guys downstairs, and
Who, the Chinese?
yeah, Chinese babies.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to agree at the end.
I hope so.
I don't think so. I don't think they're going to agree to
I think they're
agree.
going to become best friends.
What do you think is the purpose of them wanting, since you brought up Chinese, what do you think is the purpose of them coming here, trying to get birthright, and then taking off?
It's a scam. Like most of America's laws are noble, good ideas that sound great on paper, and the third world abuses them. And that's where we're at with birthright citizenship. It's getting brutally abused.
Kyla, do you think the third world is abusing these laws?
I I think birthright citizenship is fundamental to the American dream because of what America is, right? You have a bunch of people that are breaching from a monarchy for the first time in ever. They're creating this new idea, this democratic republic. And so the birthright citizenship is fundamental to kind of the American dream, which is that you're American not because of your blood or anything, you're American because you're born here, right? And I think that that's a really important thing. It's part of the American vision. If America's written down laws are so silly and weak and bad, well, then why do we have the greatest nation on the planet? I think that what we wrote into Constitution was good, and it built the structures by which we have one of the greatest countries in the world.
Yeah, I think we have too many laws, and they just keep passing laws, and I just keep doing the same shit. I never stop doing what I always do, and so can we stop passing laws? I think it gets into, when you really get deep into it, the right to run for presidency. Like, if you get a foreign national here who has birthright citizenship, the question is, can they run for president? They have to be, we might have had a Kenyan in there, but that's a different story. That's a different story. But the question becomes, can they run for president? If you're born here, you get on a plane, you fly back to China, come back here during college, should you be able to run for president? I think that's a big issue right now.
Yeah, you're not American just because you happen to be here when your mom pooped you out. And that's where we're at with this abuse of noble laws. Like, everything you just said sounds great. I love it. But it's getting abused, and we have to fix it now. We have to adjust.
And yet we have the best economy in the world, the most powerful military in the world. Like, we're leading on everything. We have the most entrepreneurship. We have the most innovation. So if the laws are bad, well, we're doing a really damn good job.
But Kyla, the question is, if your mom poops you out, should you be able to run for president?
Well, if she poops you out, that's crazy. I think that's the wrong hole. Never
the wrong hole.
If your mom poops you out, should be able to run for presidency. Sure.
They
If you're an
fly-
American citizen.
They fly here at 9 months pregnant, and they have the baby, and then they get back on the plane. They're here for like 2 weeks. That's not an American.
If
That's a
they come
scam.
back and they
That's a
embody
hustle.
the American pride, they're American citizen, and the American citizenship votes them in, yeah, I have no problem with that. As long as they follow the law.
Well, okay, so let's get into a couple of the other debates going on here while we have a little time here. We got Dr. Michael Rechtenwald versus Shabbos Konstantinbaum. Man, I hope I got that right. We're discussing Israel. Should we remain allies with them? I'm going to start with you this time, Gavin. Thoughts on that?
I'm a big Jewophile, but I think a lot of Israelis are okay with not getting any money from America. I think the problem with the whole Jewish debate is people don't recognize that there's tons of nuance even within Israelis, where Israelis are farther left than most anti-Semites. Like, they don't want the wall, they don't want any money, they support Palestine. I'm more Zionist than most Israelis, I
Okay.
would say. And yeah, we can kill the money we send over there, but I think they're an important ally.
In the region, your thoughts, Kyla?
I mean, I have a lot of issues with how Israel's handling Palestine, obviously, but I also recognize Israel as an important ally. There's a reason why they are the most important democratic ally in the Middle East. There's a reason why we have such close relationships with military testing. They give us incredible, cybersecurity information and whatnot. So Israel is incredibly valued to America, and the relationship we have, the entrepreneurial relationship alone that we have with them, is good. At the same time, I would love to see Netanyahu removed, and I think some of the crimes that he's done brought to trial.
Now, do you have a problem with Netanyahu?
Yeah, I'm not a fan. I think he's a warmonger.
Who is a fan?
I don't think a lot of Israelis
His
like
coalition,
Netanyahu.
yeah, he's. That's the problem with coalition parties, right? Is that he has to just keep making deals with further devils along the extremist right to hold power. And I think that you're a failed leader of a democracy if you have to cling on to it desperately.
Now, the question becomes, before we shoot it down to Ben, when we're allies, isn't that kind of we both get something from each other? Is that the issue with our relationship with Israel?
Yeah, we get a lot from Israel. My daughter was born at Beth Israel Hospital. She wasn't born at Muhammad Atta Hospital. I don't think there is one.
That will be the question. All right, let's toss it back. All right, Ben, we're going to toss it back to you.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, guys. Now listen, our first debate again is going to be on birthright citizenship. We're going to take a quick break, our first break, and then as soon as we do that, we're going to come back and get straight into it. We'll be right back.
I'm gonna have you open up a little bit. Yeah, I think that's better.
All right. Great. Okay, guys, we got your lights off. You can see better now. Is that working better? Come on, at least get excited about that. This guy was like, oh my gosh. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started on these debates. Appreciate you guys' patience with us. First time to do something is always a little rocky when you get started, right? It's going to be good, though. So I'll tell you who we're going to cut to now. We're going to go to Crystal, and she is standing by with our first couple of debaters and getting ready to do that. You guys know Crystal Marie? Do you know Crystal Marie? Do you love Crystal Marie? Take it away, Crystal. Let's go.
Hey guys, Crystal Marie here, and I am standing beside Pisco. Pisco, how you doing? What are you?
Doing well.
You're good?
Ready to defend the Constitution, ready to defend the rule of law. It's under attack by this administration. And so, yeah, happy for the debate to be about birthright citizenship, and I think it's going to be great.
I know you said earlier to me that you've done a lot of debate-style formats, but it's been on Discord, it's been on Zoom, it's been online mostly. What sort of preparation are you doing coming to do something, a debate like this live in front of so many people?
Yeah, so it's not my first time talking with Ryan Mullally. We have these debates all the time. But for prep, read the Supreme Court briefs. This issue is before the Supreme Court right now. You're gonna hear more about it. And so, yeah, reading the scholars and reading the briefs.
Did you coach with anyone to prepare today, or are you just on your own?
I have my friends in my various different communities who come and give me some advice. We have some spies who are looking at Ryan's stream. So, yeah, we're pretty well prepared.
Well, look at that. You're not breaking a sweat at all, which is annoying me a little bit because I want to razzle you a bit so we can get you up there. A little nervous, but nothing seems to really shake you. Why do you think you're right and he's wrong, if you could just give it to me in one sentence?
Yeah, it's just the plain meaning of the Constitution. The words are clear, and we're going to go through, I'm sure, the text. We're going to go through, I'm sure, the different histories about what these words meant. So I want people to focus on facts and logic, not on emotions. What do these words mean, and why is the Supreme Court why should they follow the law in interpreting these words?
What do you think a lot of people get wrong about you?
I think people have this feeling that I'm, like a Spock kind of guy, that I only want to get in the weeds all the time. But this is a big picture situation. This amendment is about who's part of our national club and national identity. And that's a big consideration right now, especially among Republicans and conservatives, where there's this internal struggle between groypers and between more traditional Catholic conservatives, who are trying to define the scope of what it is to be an American. And the Citizenship Clause is right in the center of it.
Well, we're about to send you off on stage. What I want to ask is, are you going to walk up very excited and charge the stage, or are you going to do a slow walk?
It'll be a bit of a slow walk. I know the crowd is going to get real excited. So, yeah, looking forward to it.
All right. Well, go be on your way. We're very excited to watch you.
Much.
Thank you so much, Pisco. Have a great debate.
Is it back on me, guys? I assume it is. Because is Crystal going to go ahead and introduce Ryan? All right, so we got Pisco up on stage. Give it up for Pisco one more time. All right, we just heard Crystal Marie interview you, Pisco. Yeah. I got to talk to you yesterday. They didn't show our amazing interview. So I'm going to ask you one question.
Yeah, go for it.
While Ryan gets in position over there. But what is your biggest strategy if he comes across at you? He's a big dude.
Listen, if he comes across at me, we're both big dudes. All right? I played rugby. I was a prop in college. But no, I think he's going to get into personalities. I think he's going to try to get under my skin and start talking about Trump. I know we got a lot of Trump supporters in the audience probably and watching, but this isn't about Trump as such. It's about what the words of the Constitution mean and how we should interpret it. So try to stay focused on that and not let him get into the political stuff.
There you go. He's prepping the crowd. I probably shouldn't have let him do that, right? He's already has a little advantage here. All right, we'll stick with that. Are we ready to go with Crystal Marie and Ryan? Are we able to jump to them now? Okay, well, I thought you were going to be talking to Crystal as well. Frankly, I think you got gypped a little bit. Hey. You got to talk to me instead. Oh. That's disappointing. Just since he got a few minutes of interview, we'll just ask you kind of what's your strategy for today?
I'm going to rely on the history. I'm going to tell the truth, and that's all you need to do. There's a serious problem. The Supreme Court should fix it, and they can.
All right. That's fantastic. Now listen, here's what we're going to do before we start, because we kind of skipped something earlier. So I need to run through the rules of the debate, because we haven't really talked about that yet. So let's jump into that real quick. So first rule, and I love this. I did not write these rules, by the way, to be clear. But the first rule says this: debaters must stop talking when the moderator speaks. Fair enough?
Yep.
Fair enough? Listen, I'm a fair dude. I like you both, even if I didn't. But when the moderator says stop, you got to stop, okay? First of all. Second of all, no calls to violence. We are not violent people. We're kind people. No racial slurs, homophobic slurs, or anything else that's going to get us booted off of most sites. We're having enough problems with that as it is. No physical contact, it says, with each other. Clearly not going to happen.
Pisco.
It also says, and not with the moderator. You wouldn't come at me, but if you do, I'm all right with it. I'll remove that rule. If you want to come at me, brah. No interruptions during the opponent's opening or closing statements, okay? Debaters must adhere to the time limits. There's going to be a big clock running back here. You will be allowed to finish your thought briefly if you get to the end, but you can't filibuster and just keep going and going and going. Otherwise, we're going to cut you off, okay? You'll hear a bell, and when you hear the bell, you got to stop. Continuing on will not be tolerated. Debaters must stick mainly to the confines of the agreed upon topic. Not going to be a problem here because I know you guys are both ready to talk specifically about this. If for some reason we have to mute your mic because you're out of control, no screaming over the mute. Moderator's decisions, it says it here, I didn't write it, are final. All instructions must be adhered to. And the consequences for rules violations, a temporary mute, time can be taken off, or your closing argument can and probably will be thrown out. You don't want that to happen. You need that closing argument. You're both lawyers. You're not going to give up that. Worst case scenario, forfeiture. All right, now that we've gotten through all that, we're going to get to you guys here. And do we have the clock ready on standby? Oh, we're going to do the openings now? All right, let's roll it. Let's get the openings.
I'm good to go.
Do we have the clock ready? Okay. Pisco, I believe you're first.
No, I should have.
No, are you first, right?
Yeah, I'm first.
Okay, then you got your first opening. Let's get that clock up. You have 5 minutes.
Hey everybody, I'm Mullally. I'm an attorney. I've litigated at every level of the U.S. judicial system, including the U.S. Supreme Court. And I'm here to tell you that the Supreme Court should limit birthright citizenship because we have a serious problem in our country right now. Right now, we have something called universal birthright citizenship. What does that mean? It means that anybody, with basically no exceptions, who has a child in this country, the child is a citizen. Doesn't matter how they got here. If
Hey,
someone
Ryan, real quick,
crosses
I hate to interrupt you. Can you lean into your mic more?
Sure,
We're just having a hard
happy
time
to.
hearing you.
If someone comes here illegally, they cross the border illegally, we reward them with citizenship for their child. Now, you don't have to take my word for this problem. This is a quote from Judge Posner, one of the most respected judges in America. He's talking about a related problem. He said, there is a huge and growing industry in Asia that arranges tourist visas for pregnant women so they can fly to the United States and give birth to an American. Obviously, Judge Posner continued, this was not the intent of the 14th Amendment of our Constitution. It makes a mockery of citizenship. And that's the problem we have today. And it's the problem that someone like Pisco embraces because he's going to argue for universal birthright citizenship. But here's the thing. President Trump was correct to attempt to limit this because the Constitution does not require it. Instead, the Constitution guarantees birthright citizenship to people who are born of at least one parent which has political allegiance to the United States. That's called complete jurisdiction is the legal term. How do I know this? Do you have to take my word for it? No, you don't. You can go back to 1884 to 1872, around the time when the 14th Amendment to our Constitution was ratified, and the court said this. I'll quote the court in Elfie Watkins. The Supreme Court said, birthright citizenship happens when they are completely subject to the political jurisdiction and owing complete and immediate allegiance. The Supreme Court knew this back then. They knew you needed complete allegiance, complete jurisdiction, not universal birthright citizenship. But how did the Supreme Court know this? They listened to the debates in Congress. The people who wrote the 14th Amendment said so. Senator Lyman Trumbull said, what do we mean by subject to the jurisdiction for the purposes of birthright citizenship? It means not owing allegiance to anybody else. That's what it means. You can't be a citizen of another country and get birthright citizenship for your child. He said subject to the jurisdiction thereof means subject to the complete jurisdiction, which is exactly what President Trump is arguing and what I'm arguing today. Senator John Bingham, another drafter of the 14th Amendment, said that you couldn't get birthright citizenship unless you were not owing an allegiance to any foreign sovereignty. If the parents were foreign citizens, they could not get birthright citizenship. That's what he said. But if Posner's word isn't good enough for you, and the Supreme Court's word isn't good enough for you, and if the drafters of the 14th Amendment's words aren't good enough for you, you can look at the overwhelming historic evidence that this is what birthright citizenship means in this country, which you can trace to the Civil War of 1861. You can trace it through the Civil Rights Act of 1866, to the ratification of the 14th Amendment in 1868, the overwhelming agreement of scholars in the period that followed, and the practices of our own government, all which show that universal birthright citizenship is a recent invention, not a constitutional requirement. We can and we should fix it. Now, against this overwhelming tide of evidence, Pisco is going to more or less hang his hat on one case. It's called Wong Kim Ark. He's going to tell you all about it. I'll leave that to him because it's his side of the argument. But here's the thing you need to know about Wong Kim Ark, and you really only need to know one thing. Wong Kim Ark only says that you have to give birthright citizenship if the parents are here permanently and legally. And President Trump agrees with that. He doesn't disagree with that. He doesn't want to change that. He agrees with that. What President Trump wants to change is if you're here illegally, if you're here temporarily doing birth tourism. He wants to say that those situations don't warrant citizenship in the greatest country on earth. And the Constitution doesn't require it. So the Supreme Court should change it. And I'll let Pisco tell you all about why I'm wrong.
Nicely done, and you had 30 seconds to spare. All right, good job, Ryan. By the way, I just want to mention, too, if you are comfortable with it, you can take the mics out if you want to hold them in your hands, okay?
Great, thank you.
But nice job. All right, Pisco, you're up. We're going to reset that timer, and we'll give you your 5 minutes.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. And thanks, everyone, for being here. I think it's a really important conversation. And I thank you to Word War Debate, and also shout out Rob Knorr. So we're all trying to figure out what this term means in the 14th Amendment. And the words are as follows: all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state in which they reside. Those are the words. And the weight of evidence is overwhelming that the Supreme Court got it right in Wong Kim Ark. Let's start with the text. Let's go through an originalist understanding of the text. All persons, no limitation, born in the United States geographically. The only dispute is on what this term, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, means. What kind of limitation is it? And you can look up dictionaries now. You can look up dictionaries that existed at the time. And what jurisdiction means is subject to the political authority, subject to the laws, subject to the power of the United States government. Notice also in that phrase, all persons born or naturalized, the subject is not the parents. The subject is the children. Are the children subject to the jurisdiction of the United States government? Just, you can start and end there with a plain meaning of what jurisdiction means, what they understood jurisdiction to mean at the time. Ryan will provide you no definition that you'll find in Black's Law Dictionary or in the contemporaneous writings of the framers of the 14th Amendment that suggests that jurisdiction is equal to this ultimately elastic test of political allegiance. Because of course it's not. What the framers were doing of the 14th Amendment was incorporating the English common law rule regarding birthright citizenship. Our American legal system isn't built out of whole cloth. It's built on a foundation of English law. That was what we imported into this country. And the law persisting in the United Kingdom or in the British Empire at the time was this law of birthright citizenship. And there were clear exceptions as recognized by the court in Wong Kim Ark that were limited and narrow to the children of ambassadors, to the children of foreign and conquering armies behind enemy lines, and then in these pseudo kind of sovereign spheres in the American context of American Indians. So that's what they meant to do. That's what the words mean. And putting aside that Elk versus Watkins, a case that Ryan cites, was cited also by the court in Wong Kim Ark. There's no contradiction between Elk v. Watkins and Wong Kim Ark. But there's a broader structural point that I want you all to take home. We have to remember what was happening in the country when the 14th Amendment was passed. We had just gone through one of the most devastating wars, the most devastating war in American history. Estimates of almost like 1 million people dead. The entire South, or much of the South and many of its major cities, ruined. Remember what started that conflict. We all know the easy answer, right? The easy answer is slavery. But there's a more fundamental layer behind that, which is what the war was about who's part of the club. It's a Jeffersonian ideal, whether all men are created equal. Remember Dred Scott. What was the Dred Scott decision about? Whether members of the slave race could be considered American citizens in this context. Now, when you realize what had happened, what the framers were trying to do, which is to prevent another conflagration like we saw in the Civil War, of course, what they wanted to do by passing a constitutional provision, not a statute, was not just overturn Dred Scott, but to make a rule that was administratable, a rule that was simple, a rule that was easy, a rule that they were familiar with. They didn't want an ultimately elastic test for the states to decide what citizenship was, or for Congress to later change what citizenship was, because they had just gone through that. And so any rule which Ryan is going to provide that turns on this ultimately elastic test of whatever he thinks political allegiance means is going to have to run into that. The framing generation after the Civil War, after Lincoln's assassination, never wanting to have a fight like this again, to firmly settle the issue. And that's ultimately what they did in the 14th Amendment by having the territorial rule with the limited common law exceptions. That's what it says, and that's what they meant.
right, you also finished it with 30 seconds left. Nice job. Okay, so those were the two opening statements, 5 minutes apiece. We're now going to go into the open debate. It's 25 minutes long. Gentlemen.
What does jurisdiction mean, Ryan?
So what Pisco's doing here is he's starting with the definition, and I see why. The reason is that jurisdiction is one of those words that has a lot of meanings. So if we can sit here all day and talk about the meaning of jurisdiction, we'll never get anywhere. I'll actually quote the Supreme Court in a case called Contract v. Ryan. This was Justice Ginsburg, for whatever that's worth. Jurisdiction is a word of many, too many meanings. But here's what I will say, Pisco. You mentioned Black's Law Dictionary, right?
Well, yeah, so Black's Law has multiple definitions in it, subject to the jurisdiction. In that context, what do you propose that it means?
Well, can I back you up a second?
Sure, but I would like for you to...
Black's Law Dictionary, for those who don't know, is, I think Pisco would agree with me, the most authoritative, the most well-known law dictionary.
It's well-known, but it's among many different dictionary definitions, which confirms that power, authority, what it means to be subject to the jurisdiction of a country is to be beholden to its laws. If illegal immigrants, even assuming that the 14th Amendment were targeted at the parents, which it's not, I just told you, it's targeted to the children, even assuming it was, of course, people who are here and who came illegally are subject to the laws of the United States. They're bound by them.
Even if they're here temporarily?
Yes, and in fact, you misquote Wong Kim Ark when you say it's just permanent people there. In Wong Kim Ark specifically, they reference the case that they're citing, which talks about temporary people staying in the country. And they knew that even people here of Chinese descent, that's what they're mentioning, who are here on a temporary basis, are subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. Scalia recognizes that that's what the term means. Conservative jurists like Judge Ho have recognized this. It's what it means, and you have no alternative definition that you've offered.
Well, let's back up a second, and we can talk about Wong Kim Ark, and I'm sure we will for a long time. But you mentioned Black's Law Dictionary in your opening.
I did.
And you've said here that you think birthright citizenship should attend even if the parents are here temporarily. So since you said that, I'm delighted you did. I'd like to read you something. This is from Henry Campbell Black, the author of Black's Law Dictionary, in his Handbook of American Constitutional Law, published in 1910. And he wrote, and I quote, "This jurisdiction," in reference to the 14th Amendment, "must at the time be both actual and exclusive. So if a stranger or traveler passing through the country or temporarily residing here, but who has not himself been naturalized and who claims to have no allegiance to our government, has a child born here who goes out of the country with his father, such child is not a citizen of the United States."
That's not
because
that's
he was
not the question.
Not subject to its jurisdiction.
That's
so Pisco,
no, that's
the
that
very author of
so
Black's
it's not
Law
true.
Dictionary, who you cited in your opening, agrees with me.
So it's
he
not
wrote
true.
Down his interpretation of constitutional law, and he's on my side.
It's not true. So you have offered no definition of what. What is? What? Hang on a second.
What's not
so,
true?
hang on. I let you finish. I let you finish. Subject to the jurisdiction thereof. That is a reference to authority, to power, and if you look at Black's Law Dictionary, you'll see that definition. And I'm asking whatever his interpretation is of the 14th Amendment isn't what we're talking about. We're talking about the meaning of the term subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And I'm asking you now for the third time, Ryan, what does that term mean?
Pisco, this is what's so embarrassing about this for you. I quoted him. He said, "This jurisdiction must at the time be actual and exclusive," and then continued to explain that if somebody was here temporarily, there would be no birthright
So let's test it.
citizenship.
So let's test it.
No,
So let's test. We're gonna
Pisco,
test it, Ryan.
No, Pisco,
so we're gonna
before we test it,
Ryan.
I
We're
need
gonna
you to
test it.
acknowledge you cited Black's. Black agrees with me, correct?
Whether he does on the 14th Amendment is
Correct.
is immaterial.
Correct,
I don't know that you're properly representing his views on the 14th Amendment.
I am
and of
absolutely
course,
properly
and of
representing
course,
this. I
and
can
of course,
send you the site,
you would agree that the authoritative sources about what the meaning of the Constitution is relates to the original public meaning.
Pisco, this was your source.
Just to be clear.
You brought him up.
Guys, you're talking so much over each other.
So we're going to get an assertion from Ryan. Ryan, is it or is it not the case that you subscribe to a theory of judicial interpretation called original public meaning?
I
Okay,
do, though,
so-
whether or not...
Wait, hold on. If you ask him a question, let him answer.
Go for it.
I do, but just to head this off at the pass, whether or not my own philosophy has any relevance to this, I don't understand.
So let's
but
see.
if you want to
So
talk about
you would agree
my
that
beliefs, we
under
can.
the notion of original public meaning, what matters isn't the specific intentions and thoughts and opinions of someone who writes a dictionary, correct?
But I gave you Pisco.
Correct or not?
I gave
Correct
you
or
in my
not?
opening. I just want to recall so that you and the audience remembers.
Yeah.
I cited the Supreme Court. I cited the people who wrote this, and then I cited overwhelming historic evidence, which I'm happy to provide. I'm not saying that Black's himself is dispositive. I'm saying it's good
so
evidence,
Black's
and
Law
it's particularly
Dictionary-
good evidence because he's an authoritative source that
So-
you yourself referenced.
So Black's Law Dictionary, from an originalist perspective, isn't relevant insofar as Black's specific intentions with respect to a word. It's because the words of the dictionary, as they're understood by the public, is what controls. That's what the judicial philosophy is about. And of course, you're citing the Supreme Court in Elk versus Watkins. That's a decision that supports my position. That's a decision that supports the English common law as the root of what the 14th Amendment means. And that's what's brought in by Watkins. So we're going to now test your theory. So what is your assertion about what the term subject to the jurisdiction thereof means? This is the fourth time I'm answering. I'm asking it. Answer
It
it.
requires complete jurisdiction, and I know that because
Wait.
when
What
you
does that
look-
mean?
When you look at what the people who wrote this phrase said, here's Senator Lyman Trumbull, and Pisco asked for originalism. This is the cleanest piece of originalist evidence you will ever see. What he said, and remember, we're talking about the phrase subject to the jurisdiction thereof, and my argument, it means
What
complete
does it mean?
jurisdiction.
What does subject to the jurisdiction thereof
You
mean?
gotta let me answer the question. I'm just trying to frame this. My point is, subject to the jurisdiction thereof means the complete jurisdiction. And here is what Senator Trumbull, who helped write the 14th Amendment, here's what he said. Subject to the jurisdiction thereof means subject to the complete jurisdiction thereof. It's word for
What
word
does
my
that?
position.
Wait, no. You're just replacing.
word for word my
So
position,
notice what's
Pisco.
going on here. He says the meaning of subject to the jurisdiction thereof means the complete jurisdiction of the United
Complete.
States. Correct? Complete jurisdiction. I'm asking you what that means. What does complete jurisdiction in that context mean?
Political allegiance. So
Political allegiance.
To give you the
So-
history lesson,
Just
this
to
is,
be
no,
clear,
this
let's
doesn't
get out
co-
of personalities.
Let me answer the
You just
question,
heard him
Pisco.
say.
Hold on, Pisco.
let me
You're
answer
doing
the
it again.
question.
Let him answer it first.
Political allegiance was not like an empty term back then. Remember, Pisco reminded you there was just a civil war. Now, one of the things that happened in the Civil War is that there was a draft in 1863. And in the draft, they had to figure out who could be drafted to fight. They had an odd situation because there were foreigners living in America permanently. They had been here a long time. But when draft day came, all of a sudden, they're not American, they're French, and they don't want to fight. And the country had to figure out who was sufficiently ours? Who do we have complete jurisdiction over? Who has political allegiance to this country? So what Congress did in 1863, just a few years before they ratified the 14th Amendment, is that they decided that foreigners who had signed what's called a Declaration of Intent could be drafted. Why? Because in the Declaration of Intent, the foreigners said that they forswore their foreign allegiances and that they wanted to be U.S. citizens, and by doing that, we now had complete jurisdiction over them because they had accepted political allegiance in this
You
country.
haven't explained the concept
I
of
just
political.
explained the concept.
So just to be clear, you didn't. What you just said are things that people in this situation could do to suffice political allegiance, but you haven't explained the concept of political allegiance. It sounds like what you're suggesting is political allegiance is some sort of commitment in favor of the government of the United States. Is that correct?
Yeah, there are things in our government that require political allegiance. For example, you cannot be charged with treason unless you owe the government allegiance. That makes sense, because if you don't owe the government allegiance, you can't be treasonous against the government. Similarly, you can't be drafted unless you owe the government political allegiance, because it doesn't make sense. You don't owe the government your military service unless you owe them political allegiance. And this was definitely on the mind of the people who wrote this document in 1866, because it happened 3 years earlier in 1863. So this is definitely what they were thinking about at the time they wrote these words.
This is how extreme Ryan's interpretation is. When he views political allegiance as the definition of jurisdiction through these confused and ultimately futile references to the debates which he's misrepresenting. Political allegiance, if that were the basis of subject to the jurisdiction thereof, freed black slaves wouldn't necessarily have political allegiance to the United States government and therefore wouldn't be freed. But everyone agrees that at a bare minimum, the Citizenship Clause of the 14th Amendment gave citizenship to those people. If it turns on political allegiance, that is precisely what the founding generation of this amendment wanted to avoid, an elastic test where the states would determine what political allegiance means, or the Congress would determine political allegiance to be some kind of loyalty to the United States. This is hogwash. What they wanted was a clean, simple rule according to the English common law. And what the English common law viewed allegiance as, it's a term of art, it's not what he's sort of importing in, was if you were born on the king's land, you were a subject of the king. That's what they meant. Allegiance and protection are one in one. And it implies a duty to obey the king's laws. Now, who is absent that duty and that protection? Ambassadors, diplomatic people, foreign conquering armies, and in the case of America, the American Indian tribes. So that, of course, makes complete sense. What doesn't make sense is an interpretation of jurisdiction, which means political allegiance, which wouldn't even guarantee citizenship to freed slaves. That, of course, must be a preposterous reading of the 14th Amendment.
Pisco said a bunch of things there that are dead wrong, so I'm going to try to correct them. I'm going to do it briefly, and then we might zoom in on them, but I'm just, if you don't mind, let me work through, because you had quite a monologue there. The first is, Pisco asserts that my definition would not necessarily have given citizenship to freed black slaves. That's absurd. If you were here for multiple generations, the question is, who do you owe allegiance to? Is it to some potentate in Africa, in a country that you've never been to? Is it really reasonable that you would be charged with treason or drafted into the military to a country you've never seen? No, obviously, the allegiance was to the United States. There's no question about that.
Wait, we're talking about the kids. Wait, we're talking about the kids.
You had a very long list.
We're talking about the kids. We're talking
Pisco,
about the kids.
you had a very long list.
Let
me give the highlights, and then we can zoom in.
We're talking about the kids, not the parents.
We can zoom in where you'd like afterwards, Pisco. Second, Pisco asserted that the English common law should govern. This is also ridiculous, because he said it himself. The English common law was not about birthright citizenship. It was about birthright subjecthood. You were a subject of the king. You could never expatriate. You could never renounce your citizenship. You were loyal forever. And guess who that applied to? All the Americans pre-revolution. And then we fought a revolution specifically to get rid of that rule, because if we were subjects of the king, the revolution is obviously illegal.
That's not what the war was about.
So the idea
That's
that
not
this
what the war was
translated
about.
over is absolutely nonsense. And then the biggest whopper, it's a technical one, but it's just wrong. Pisco said that Congress can't change citizenship. They wanted to have it set in stone by the 14th Amendment, which is just factually incorrect.
No, change, sorry. So Congress isn't able to adjust what the 14th Amendment means through statute. One of the reasons they were trying to pass a constitutional provision was, one, to overturn Dred Scott, but they didn't use the words, and only freed slaves shall be citizens, right? They used more general language. And of course, they didn't want the language that they were specifically including in the 14th Amendment to be able to be trivially adjusted by either Congress or the states deciding different rules on political allegiance. But there's something really important we need to,
I have to follow up on that. I have to follow up on that.
We need to focus.
I think we've hit our time. So let's take a break for a second.
Okay.
That was the end of the first round. I guess there isn't a bell. Yeah, well, no, you guys can stay up here for a minute. But we're just going to give just a couple seconds. You want to grab some water? Yeah. Take a break for a second. And then I'm going to ask you guys in between here, while they're setting up this next round, how's it going so far? Do you feel, Pisco, you seem to be getting a little frustrated with him. You have a specific line you're trying to go down. It feels like he's avoiding it. Yep.
I think we're going to get into some hypotheticals, but we're also going to focus in on the scope of who the 14th Amendment applies to. And my strategy is, once we get into the fact that it's referring to children and not their parents, I think he's got nowhere to go with this political allegiance thing. In what sense can a baby owe political allegiance in the way that Ryan is implying?
And then Ryan, what do you think is happening here? It feels like you're trying to get a little more historical context, and you keep getting cut off.
I'm delighted about how this is going because the question that Pisco raised is what's the original meaning? And the original meaning of the Constitution is determined by the history. Pisco doesn't seem prepared to discuss the history. So in a sense, he's conceded the debate.
I think that's wild.
Decide that. That's not for you. Take another sip of water. I think we're getting ready to roll it again. 25 minutes, correct, guys? We'll put 25 minutes, on the clock, and you guys will have your second open debate begins now.
So let's focus on the subject of the 14th Amendment.
Whoa,
does it?
no,
So just to be clear,
you said
does it
something that
refer?
was
Does it?
factually-
Does it
Pisco, you
refer?
lied
Does it
before the
refer?
break. We have
Does
to
it?
talk about this.
Does it refer? I'm asking you the question. You can answer it. Does it refer to the children? That is, the people, the persons born, or does it refer to their parents? Just answer that.
I will answer this question on the guarantee that I get to ask mine when I'm done.
Sure.
Well, I can
Okay.
guarantee you'll ask yours. But
Okay.
answer his question.
So, with the 14th Amendment, it says if you're born and subject to the jurisdiction, and I've asserted that means complete jurisdiction, the political allegiance of a child follows their parent. So every child has the same political allegiance of their parents, which is why you look to the parents to determine what their political allegiance is.
So why is Wong Kim Ark?
Obviously.
Was Wong Kim Ark a citizen? This is the case that we're talking about. Unless you're proposing overturning Wong Kim Ark, that case, their parents were subjects of the King of China. And yet the Supreme Court, you claim history, you claim precedent, the Supreme Court said, notwithstanding the fact that Wong Kim Ark's parents are subject to the Emperor of China, that nonetheless he is subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. You have a huge problem, don't you, Ryan?
And Wong Kim Ark was wrongly reasoned. But here's the great thing, and this is the cleverness of what President Trump did. Wong Kim Ark, even though it was technically a bad decision, it only held one single question. If someone is here who legally and permanently, despite not being a citizen, does their children get citizenship? And President Trump knew about this, his lawyers told him, and anticipated it. And if you look at President Trump's January 2025 executive order that limited birthright citizenship, he put it on all fours with Wong Kim Ark. He said the only people who will not get birthright citizenship going forward, who used to get it, are in situations where the mother is here illegally or temporarily, and the father does not have
So if you
status.
come here illegally-
So Wong Kim Ark held exactly that. It's not a problem.
So if you come here illegally, you're not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. That's your contention, correct?
You're not subject to the complete jurisdiction.
Okay, so here's just a question for you. After Thomas Jefferson's administration, was it illegal to import slaves into the country?
Was it illegal to import slaves into the country?
Yes, that's the question.
I don't know the answer.
The answer was yes.
Okay.
We banned the importation of slaves. And notwithstanding they making it illegal to import slaves into the country, people still did it. And so my question for you, Ryan, is the following. For people who were brought into this country illegally against the United States law in violation of the international slave laws that banned the importation of slaves into this country, are their children citizens, yes or no?
Obviously, yes.
But they came here illegally. They came here illegally.
No, they were taken here illegally. What Pisco's conflating are people today who crossed the border illegally on purpose to have anchor babies in the country.
I'm not
with
conflating
people
that.
who were victimized and trafficked to come over
No,
here
wait,
against
wait,
their
no, that's
will.
it. Wait, first of all,
and
that's-
I think that what the conflation there is obvious, and the ramifications of the conflation are obvious. I'd like to ask my question
Go
now,
for it.
Pisco, if you don't mind. Earlier, you said, I'm paraphrasing because I didn't write down the exact quote, but you said something along the lines of, Congress didn't want to leave the issue open. They didn't want future Congresses to muck around and change citizenship. Is that right?
No, I didn't say in every respect. Of course, under Article 1, Congress has the naturalization authority to make additional rules of citizenship. But with respect to the specific birthright citizenship issue that they were trying to correct after Dred Scott led to a fucking, excuse my French, civil war in this country, that they didn't want that to be touched by states or by Congress.
And in 1868, were Indians qualifying for birthright citizens?
They were not qualified for birthright citizenship under the Constitution because of their specific constitutional status and the fact that they're considered their own little islands of sovereignty. It's a sort of peculiarity of American law that the English common law didn't have to deal with.
Because they lack political allegiance to the United States, maybe?
Because they're not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States.
They're not subject to
They're
the
not
complete jurisdiction of the United States.
No.
Could you charge them with a crime if they robbed a bank? Of course.
So
could you charge them with a crime if they assaulted
Can
someone?
you-
Of course.
you-
But you could not draft them. They were not subject to the complete allegiance of the United States. He's conceding the point.
It's not a concession. Elk versus Watkins fits with Wong Kim Ark. The case that he's citing about American Indians is because they are, in fact, treated differently, much the same as, like, for example, diplomats are in different kinds of ways. They're their own sovereign islands in the United States. It's a peculiarity of American jurisprudence, but it proves the point. It proves the point that subject to the jurisdiction in general means subject to the laws, the authority of the United States. And what he's told you is, and you're going to answer this question, that Congress, if it wanted to, could create a test for political allegiance and thereby change the meaning of the 14th Amendment. Yes?
I mean,
could they or not?
Not
Could they
only
or not?
Could they? They already have. What Pisco told you is that Indians did not get birthright citizenship in 1868 because they were their own sovereigns. They did not have
Because they're
complete
not
political
subject to the jurisdiction.
But then, in 1924, Congress passed a law that made it so that they did get birthright citizenship. And now they are completely subject to American jurisdiction. They do have complete allegiance, and now they get birthright citizenship. So not only can Congress do this, Congress already has.
Why would Congress do that in the 1860s? Why would Congress make a constitutional provision, the Citizenship Clause, that could be so trivially adjusted by just passing a law that says, oh, now we consider these people to be political? Do you understand how much abuse could be done if all of a sudden Democrats get in charge of the United States government? They say anyone who supported January 6th, we're construing them as not having political allegiance to the United States, and therefore their kids don't get birthright citizenship, putting aside the fact that the 14th Amendment applies to children, not to their parents. Why would they do that? They just fought a civil war to settle an issue. They didn't want to have future generations question the war that they just fought and the question of membership into a club. So of course, the American Indian exception proves the rule. It proves the rule that being subject to the jurisdiction of the United States means being subject to the power and legal authority of the United States, which of course the children of such people are. And if you take his interpretation, there's no limiting principle there. Even lawful permanent residents, right? They don't innately they're not subject to the political allegiance in the way that he's suggesting. And so it doesn't have any limiting principle. It means whatever Congress says political allegiance means. And that can't be what the Civil War generation wanted to do to settle this important question and just limit for whatever Congress or whatever state governments want to define political allegiance to be. That isn't what they meant.
Pisco just took a very long time to say he couldn't possibly imagine how Congress could do something that I just proved that Congress did. So I don't really care whether Pisco can imagine how they can do it because the historical record proves that it actually happened. And Pisco, if we're doing hypotheticals, let me ask you. No. You just talk for like 10 minutes, brother. Let me ask you this. If America tomorrow passed a law that said we no longer honor diplomatic immunity, we no longer care if diplomats are immune, we're going to prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law every single time. On your definition, would that change birthright citizenship?
It wouldn't change birthright citizenship. You're adjusting one of the exceptions of subject to the jurisdiction thereof, but those are in the exceptions, right? You're not changing it for the vast swaths of
Pisco
people.
only has two exceptions, ambassadors and Indians. Now they've both changed.
So three exceptions. And what's preferable? A rule where you can adjust at the margins about invasion and about American Indians and diplomats, or a rule where the entire thing is up for the next generation to decide. Of course, that's absurd. And no, in the 20th century, they didn't give American Indians political allegiance by statute. They used their Article I authorities to give automatic naturalization to people born on American Indian reservations. That's what they did then. And if it were the
That's what political allegiance is.
At a bare minimum, you should accept, though, that if we're looking to what Congress does, the statutes that Congress passed in the 1940s, 1950s, which includes their interpretation of Wong Kim Ark, that when they passed those laws, regardless of whether you think, Ryan, in your majesty, that Wong Kim Ark was wrongly decided, the members who made the statutes in the 1940s and 50s, they understood what Wong Kim Ark did. They understood that they were incorporating the English common law as Wong Kim Ark says they did. You can't cite the Supreme Court and say that you're the one grounded in history by ignoring the reasoning of the Supreme Court and the later Congresses that ratified that interpretation into law. So even if it were the case that we would accept your preposterous, elastic, where political allegiance means anything you want, and you'll notice he didn't say that it would be impermissible for Congress to define political allegiance such that it would apply to anyone who supported Trump. There is nothing about what he offered
that Pisco
would limit
wants,
that situation.
I'm so happy that Pisco wants to get into the history, but he picked the wrong era. He's talking about the 1930s, but the question is, what did these words
40s.
mean circa 1868?
Not under statute.
Now, here's what's interesting about that. In 1873, the Attorney General wrote, "The word jurisdiction must be understood to mean absolute or complete jurisdiction, such as the United States had over its citizens before the adoption of the amendment." Complete jurisdiction, my point. Then, in 1885, there were several examples where secretaries of state and the Department of Justice denied birthright citizenship in situations where, for example, a German couple was here temporarily, they had a kid, they took the kid back to Germany, and then they wrote a letter that said, "Is our child a citizen?" And our government in 1885 said, "No, this is after the 14th Amendment was ratified." Clearly, they didn't believe in universal birthright citizenship then. There's another story. Miss Devereaux, I forgot her first name, I'm sorry. She's an Irish woman. She was trying to enter New York, and she was held up. They were processing the paperwork. Her boat was held in the harbor, and she went into labor. Because the people there were not monsters, they took her to a hospital in New York where she gave birth. Her child had birthright citizenship according to Pisco. But did the government think so? No. The government said that she had to go back to Ireland. Her kid was not a citizen because she was only here temporarily, and she had to take the kid with her. So clearly, in 1800s, where Pisco does not want to talk about because he's doing 1930s, this was not the understanding of these words. And while Pisco wanted to throw my originalism in my face, what I'm actually interested in is the original meaning of these words, which is why I'm talking about evidence from that
very
time period.
sneaky tactics here from Ryan. So he pretends that I'm unmoored from the 1860s. No, we can talk about the 1860s all you want. When I was referencing an alternative argument, which is the 20th century enactment of laws incorporating then understanding of the Supreme Court precedent of Wong Kim Ark, obviously with respect to the statute, what I'm talking about is originalism on that score, not the Constitution. So sneaky to say that I'm ignoring originalism for purpose of a statute that he knows is with reference to the 1940s and 1950s. But no, take the rule in the 1860s. What was understood by the time of those people was that they were incorporating the then existing laws of birth by territory. That's what they were doing. And this isn't just some thing coming out of Zeus's head. That was the prevailing English common law rule that you can see out of state courts in New York and various different states of the Union that recognized at the time the prevailing rule. The prevailing rule was that, yes, even temporary visitors are subject to allegiance in the sense of protection, in the sense of they are bound by the laws of the government of the United States. And his interpretation would lead to absurdities. And here's a hypothetical, Ryan. If Congress wanted to, could it define political allegiance under the 14th Amendment such that no alien is politically aligned to the United States? Yes or no?
No alien?
Yes, no alien.
Yeah, they could do that.
So this is what Ryan is trying to tell you, that Congress, with a stroke of a pen, after they passed an amendment, after they fought a bloody civil war, could just get rid of birthright citizenship for anyone who's not a U.S. citizen. But that can't have been, just let me finish.
Not going backwards, going
but
forwards.
That can't have been what the founding generation of the 14th Amendment wanted to do. They already had laws that allowed for this kind of citizenship through the blood and the parentage of the people. So they couldn't have wanted it for it to be possible for Congress to just edit out the 14th Amendment. I know that that's what a lot of you people want to do, is just get rid of the 14th Amendment and pretend it doesn't exist. But if they had wanted the 14th Amendment to be as elastic as Ryan is suggesting, they just would have overturned Dred Scott and left the rest to Congress of future years. That's not what they were trying to do.
See, Pisco keeps saying this is what they were not trying to do, but again and again, I've given you historical evidence of why that is exactly what happened. So I don't know why Pisco's hypotheticals would possibly outweigh the examples I've given you of what the government actually did in 1863, in 1885, in 1973, over and over again. And by the way, this wasn't something that was like frozen in time. If you flash forward into the 1930s that Pisco is so fond of, you might remember that we had a guest work program where millions of Mexicans came to the country to do guest work. And while they were here, it is estimated that 400,000 children were born. After that program ended due to the Great Depression, there was a mass repatriation, which was largely voluntary, but did include many deportations, and not a single claim for birthright citizenship of those children inured, because it wasn't thought that they had birthright citizenship because they were here
if we're going by government practice, you have to agree that the overwhelming government practice throughout the entirety of since the 14th Amendment has been to grant birthright citizenship precisely in the way I suggest. That is the overwhelming practice, correct?
Since the 1950s.
No,
but
before then.
But keep in mind,
wait, no, is the answer yes, Ryan?
When I cite government practice, I'm not citing it because I say government practice controls everything going forward. I'm citing it because I'm asking what is the original meaning of this provision, so I'm trying to give you examples of what the government believed at this time, 1868. What the government was doing in 1970 or 1983 has very little
in
to
the
do with that
1860s
question, whereas what they were doing in 1873 is highly probative.
Let's put together two parts of what Ryan said. Ryan said that it's possible for Congress to withdraw citizenship, birthright citizenship through political allegiance of any alien. He said this.
Going forward, not going backwards.
No way. You're saying that
I clarified when you asked the question.
It would have been possible for earlier Congresses to get rid of citizenship, birthright citizenship, for any alien. You did say that.
No, I said going forward. You said that, and
Is there something special about the year 2026 that going forward only means from 2026 onward? Where's that coming from?
The reason this matters, and this is very in the weeds legally, so I hope.
All right, so just put it past.
No. The reason you said it, so I'm going to explain it. In law, there's something called reliance interests. It's one thing for Congress to change the law and say, in the future, we're going to limit birthright citizenship, because those kids aren't born yet. They don't rely on it. This is in the future. Going back in time and taking away from citizens who have lived here for a long time is clearly different legally.
That's not what I'm talking about.
Let me finish the point. This is why President Trump's executive order only applies going forward. He is not seeking
that's
to
not what I'm
take
talking
away
about.
birthright citizenship from anybody who already has it, and the Supreme Court will not decide that question because President Trump has not asked them to.
So I'm not suggesting
that
the executive order, at no point did I suggest that the executive order is backward facing or imply it. What I'm saying is it's your belief that Congress could have in the 1860s defined political allegiance so as to exclude any alien, and you did say that.
I said yes, going forward.
And you're talking about 1868. That's great. That's the frame of reference I want to use. I'm applying originalism. It was totally understood by the framing generation that Chinese people of Chinese descent who are here, could not have birthright citizenship taken away from them. That is clear in the debates, in the 1860 debates. How do you square that? The two things. One, that he says that Congress, if it wanted to, could deprive birthright citizenship of any alien, including people of Chinese descent, and the fact that in the debates about the 14th Amendment, if that's what we're going through, that they said they couldn't. It's a contradiction because it's not true. He's inventing political allegiance. Jurisdiction doesn't mean political allegiance. It means the power of the state. I have jurisdiction to hear a case. I have jurisdiction, IRS has jurisdiction over your taxes. It means power. It means authority, not this loosey-goosey test where we can invent Republicans not having political allegiance. That's what his test will lead to.
Pisco's concerned about the hypothetical when, as I explained earlier, this has literally already happened. At one point, Native Americans Americans were subject to the jurisdiction in the way Pisco's talking about. You could sue them, you could throw them in jail, but they were not qualifying for birthright citizens because they did not have sufficient political allegiance. And then in 1924, Congress in its wisdom changed that, and now they do have political allegiance because Congress made a change. And as I pointed out earlier, if you change the rules about ambassadors, that would change their birthright citizenship status as well. It's clear Congress can change these things. Pisco just doesn't like that they can, but I'm not sure why that's relevant because they've already done it.
Here's the kicker. Do all U.S. citizens have political allegiance to the United States?
Yes.
Why? By virtue of what?
Pisco, you and I think many people in the audience will remember this experience.
Answer the question.
You turned 18, and if you're a gentleman, you received a selective service card. You had to register for the draft. And if you didn't, you could be thrown in jail.
But Ryan,
why did you have that obligation? Because you owe complete
wait.
political allegiance
Wait a second.
to the United
So
States.
this
could not be more obvious.
It's absurd. So listen to what he just said, right? He says, complete jurisdiction, by which we mean political allegiance for all U.S. citizenship, is given by virtue of your signing up for the draft card. But
It's
here,
evidence of it.
putting aside that there's no evidence whatsoever, no writings in the text that support this kind of intuition that political allegiance turns on your draftability, whatever. It's all nonsense. It's all ahistorical. It excludes.
Whoa.
Wait, no,
I gave you the evidence earlier.
Excuse me.
Do you not remember?
So it excludes women who don't have to sign up for the draft, and by virtue of this could be denied political allegiance by your own test, and the fact that your reading completely warps the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment applies to babies. Subject to the jurisdiction, political allegiance applies to babies. So, of course, it's ridiculous on your own view to think that political allegiance by dint of U.S. citizenship is granted through the draft cards if you're saying that babies are the ones who have political allegiance. And, of course, they haven't signed any draft selected service cards.
The political allegiance of babies obviously follows their parents. I have two beautiful girls. When they were born, their political allegiance was my political allegiance because they were babies. To think that this is a complicated legal question is to get lost in the weeds of like the deep type of.
So then why did you say this thing about draft?
That overcomplicates things
wait.
that are not.
So why did you say this thing? So why did you say this? I asked you the question, and why did you say this about the draft card? If all you meant to say was political allegiance tracks the parents, you didn't say that.
Because
you said draft. And now this is a walk back because he realizes that the mess he made for himself, that when he said draft card, he's excluding half the population.
This is why,
and he's excluding babies.
Why I said draft card, Pisco, if you want to ask the question with a question mark. Earlier, and you seem to have just forgot that I said this, when I was explaining the concept of complete allegiance, complete jurisdiction, I mentioned that in 1863 there were foreigners in the country and the country had to decide could they be drafted. That was the example that was on the mind of the Congress people 3 years later. And what did they decide? They decided that only foreigners who had signed a declaration of intent and said that they owe complete political allegiance to this country could be drafted. So the idea that 3 years later the same Congress people would find this idea puzzling is laughable. Obviously they knew what complete political allegiance was.
It didn't mean draft cards.
The law 3 years ago.
So it didn't mean you signing up for the draft. And that's the answer that you provided, that you're walking back. You're walking back because you know it's garbage. If signing up for the draft was all it took for political allegiance, where are the writings in the 14th Amendment in the 1860s that state this? They're saying Chinese people, even temporary people who are here, are citizens. They didn't say that Congress can take that away. Of course, it's absurd.
Time. Good job, guys. Good job. Really well done. All right. Closing. Pisco, you're first.
It's 2028. President Gavin Newsom has just been elected. Gavin Newsom comes in with a commanding majority in the Congress. They have filibuster-proof or senators willing to get rid of the filibuster. The first acts they do in Congress is they say, we're going to incorporate Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. They're going to call everyone who was there on January 6th an insurrectionist. They're going to say anyone who supports people who are there on January 6th have no political allegiance to the United States. By virtue of the fact, under President Gavin Newsom's executive order and his Congress, they have now stripped, by constitutional provision, all political allegiance from Trump supporters. On Ryan's view, this would be not just constitutional, but normal. They could do this, that Congress could just adjust your God-given right to citizenship as given to you, I guess, by the 14th Amendment. But surely that wasn't what the framers of the 14th Amendment wanted. They couldn't have done that with the expectation that even citizens could be deprived of their political allegiance by a mere act of Congress. They wanted to settle the issue, and all the history supports that. If you actually look in the debates in the 1860s, the ratifying amendments, some of the statements are conflicting with each other. Even Ryan's going to have to grant that. But they say, yes, even temporary people who are here for short periods of time are subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. Of course, babies, remember, the operative subject of the 14th Amendment Citizenship Clause are not their parents. It's babies, right? There's no textual argument against that. All persons born, right? Parents, at the moment their child are born, aren't born to, right? It's their kids. And of course, the kids of illegal immigrants, the kids of people who are temporarily, are subject to the powers and authorities of the government. All the Supreme Court case law supports it too. Elk versus Watkins, the case that he cites, yes, it carves out a special area for the American Indians. That makes complete sense. American Indians were in some sense considered foreign nations. They had this quasi-sovereign role in the United States, a peculiarity of American history and constitutional jurisprudence. But the English common law was predominant in Elk versus Watkins and Wong Kim Ark. Ryan's playing this trick on you. He's pretending that he wants to keep the result of Wong Kim Ark just because he can make some face-saving maneuver that Trump's executive order is in compliance with it. But the important thing of a Supreme Court ruling is not just the people who are affected and what their factual circumstances are, but the reasoning of the Supreme Court. And that rested foundationally on the English rule that the Americans imported. Yes, the rules of subjecthood, the rules of the king. They imported, you can say that they didn't want to do that. You have no evidence to back that up. That's what they were doing. They were trying to correct a mistake. The mistake was Dred Scott, and the mistake was the Civil War. They didn't want the Civil War to happen again because ultimately, questions of slavery, questions of equal protection, whether all men are created equal, has to do with who's a member of our community, who's a member of the club. What does it mean to be a nation? And they wanted an administratable rule that couldn't be destroyed with the flick of a pen. Ryan's view, Ryan's interpretation, gives you no protections. It gives you the protection of political whim. That's it. And thankfully, that is not what the framers of the 14th Amendment intended, that political allegiance and pure viewpoint discrimination could dictate whether you're a citizen or not. Thank you.
All right, well done. 5 minutes. You're closing, Ryan.
In law, we have a saying where if you're right on the law, argue the law. If you're right on the facts, argue the facts. If you're right on neither, pound the table. Pisco's pounding the table right now. You notice how often he accuses me of something as if I have something to do with what the Supreme Court's going to do. But it's not up to me. It's up to the law and it's up to the justices. So none of that matters at all. You'll also notice that Pisco makes a lot of statements about what the history is, but he can't quote it and can't recite it for you. I can. Pisco makes a lot of arguments about the fact that Congress couldn't do something, even though I pointed out to him multiple times that they already did. His arguments just don't make sense. But it's more fundamental than that. Let me just explain to you how clear this history is. On April 9th, 1866, the Congress of the United States, the 39th Congress, passed the Civil Rights Act, and it said the following: all persons born in the United States and not subject to any foreign power, excluding Indians not taxed, are hereby declared citizens of the United States. If you were subject to a foreign power, if you were a foreign citizen, you did not get birthright citizenship. Then, on June 13, 1866, 2 months later, the same Congress passed the 14th Amendment and sent it to the states for ratification. But they drafted it 2 months after they drafted that language. Pisco would have you believe they completely changed their mind, and now you get universal birthright citizenship in 2 months without saying anything about it. It's completely implausible. It's also contradictory to what they actually said. During the debates on the 14th Amendment, Senator Howard, the man who introduced the amendment, said, "The amendment which I have offered is simply declaratory of what I regard as the law of the land already." And he would know what the law of the land already was because he passed it 2 months ago. It's probably still on his mind since he just did it. Not only that, the Civil Rights Act of 1866, which has the language that just proves I'm right about this, didn't go away after the 14th Amendment. If it was contradictory to it, as Pisco claims, it would be abolished by the 14th Amendment, or at least altered. But in fact, in 1870, Congress reenacted it in the Enforcement Acts, and it was good law for 70 years until it was changed. Clearly, Congress was doing what is obvious. They were constitutionalizing the rule they articulated in 1866 that you have to have complete jurisdiction, meaning political allegiance. This is totally clear on the evidence. It's totally clear on the scholarship of the era. In fact, Thomas Cooley, the leading constitutional scholar of his era in 1880, wrote that the 14th Amendment required full and complete jurisdiction to which citizens generally are subject, and not any qualified and partial jurisdiction such as may consist with allegiance to some other government. If you had allegiance to another government, you did not have complete allegiance to this country, and as a result, you did not qualify for birthright citizenship. The universal birthright citizenship argument is an invention of the recent past. And I will obviously concede, because it's just true, that our government has been doing it for a long time. But that's not the question. The question is, are we constitutionally required to do it? And we are not.
All right. Great job again, both of you guys. All right, so a couple of notes here. So for everyone who's at home, who's watching on the stream right now, and for all folks who are here right now live in the studio, if you go to wordwardebate.com, you can vote on this debate right now. Vote and see who you say won this debate. We're also going to do, while you're doing that, we're going to take 2 questions for each of these gentlemen from the audience. So I need to know who wants to ask a question. And in order to see that, you're either going to have to put your hand up high or stand up, because there's a pretty bright light in my eyes. All right, I see one over here. Is your question for Ryan or for Pisco? Let me put it this way. Okay, so come and line up on this side, right there. There's a mic right here. Stand right here. Let me get one for who has a question for Pisco? Okay, I can see the hand on the other side of the camera, so come on to this side. Or I guess right behind him, sorry. Apologize for that. All right, let's get that question for Ryan first.
Hey, what's going on, buddy?
Doing good. So I have a little bit, I think, great arguments from you, great arguments from Pisco, but I feel like there's a little bit of an idea supplied by your argument, which is that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. That basically the children are responsible for the sins of their fathers when they come into America. Which that idea, it seems kind of like an old world idea and something that we don't apply to people in America. You know, we have these dreams of like individual liberty, and the idea that a child would be punished because of the actions of their parents, such that they couldn't even be granted citizenship in the country. That seems very old-minded to me. So I guess what would you?
I think
suggest that.
It's actually the opposite priority. Like if you think about the English common law rule that Pisco was talking about, it was a rule of subjecthood. The leading scholar of that area is named Blackstone. He wrote 4 volumes on this. He doesn't mention the word citizenship once because you weren't citizens in England. You were subjects to a feudal lord. So when America rejected this proposition, it's far from the sins of the father. What we're saying is we have a social compact. That's why the Declaration of Independence says that we're governed by the consent of the governed, right? And to be part of a social compact, the people have to let you in. So the question is not really the sins of the father, it's more if somebody is breaking the social compact on purpose, are we required constitutionally to reward them? And I think the answer is no for all the reasons I described.
Oh, yeah. Can I do one?
Sure, go ahead.
One back and forth? All right, cool. Final thing. I guess even this idea, this term social compact, right? I think you make a delineation between a social compact and the social contract for a reason. And this idea of a social compact that everyone is forced into, this feels like a sort of collectivism, which seems antithetical to the American project to me.
No, I don't think that's collectivism. I think all just
a social compact, it must be, right?
All government must be social compact because the only way that you can have power over people justly is through their consent. So when people consent to be governed, and in fact when they consent to be governed, that's actually what complete jurisdiction, complete political allegiance is. That comes with responsibilities like the draft, like the fact that you could be charged with treason. But that's not collectivism, that's justice.
All right, yeah, I'll give it there. I mean, great job for you guys. Yeah.
Nice job, nice job. All right, sir, go ahead. Your question's for Pisco, correct?
Hey, Pisco.
How you doing, brother?
Good. I'm a Covert Patriot on X. So my question is, why are you obviously like blatantly ignoring the fact that the people that there are, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of people, I don't know the exact numbers, that they have no interest in being American citizens. They don't share any of American values. They have no interest in actually living here, residing here, living by our Constitution. And they're obviously just doing this to exploit that, whatever, you want to call it, whether it's a loophole or just like your idea of universal, the universal idea that, if you're born here, you're a citizen. Why do you just ignore all that?
I don't ignore it. I think that the values that you bring up, that a lot of people are pointing out, that certain people who cross the border don't seem to share from your perspective. Things like, properly integrated into our societies. The very fact that there's so much disagreement about what that means and what that entails is that any test that turns on subjective preferences regarding whether or not someone has fully assimilated or things like that can't have been what the framers of the Constitution wanted when they set a rule at a time when our country was more divided. The Civil War was a time when we were more at each other's throats, hundreds of thousands of people, brother against brother. So that's a policy disagreement or policy argument that doesn't resolve the fundamental question. There are a lot of constitutional provisions that people can abuse. People can abuse, I guess their due process rights. You've heard this, right? That, why do we give these people due process when we come into the, Kilmar Abrego Garcia? And people say, well, he came here illegally. Why should he get the benefit of the due process clause? People abuse, some might say, the right against self-incrimination. Why do we protect people who plead the fifth, right? These are criminals. We should force them to say what actually happened on pain of perjury. But the reason why sometimes strong constitutional provisions will unfortunately get in some bad actors is if we don't have that level of robustness, even when there are policy reasons against it, it undermines all of our protections, the good people. And the test he just gave you, that is of political allegiance, that is the whim and discretion of the people in Congress. Who trusts Congress here? Raise your hand. Not a single hand. Not a single hand. So yes, this can be abused by people. I don't doubt that. I don't deny it. But the reason we have it is so that the government, so we're not bootlicking shills, at the discretion of the government to decide these most foundational questions.
Can I get a quick follow-up?
Follow-up.
So what would you do then to minimize, that? People that are just obviously exploiting it, that have no interest in living here and living as Americans?
I think Trump has moved the needle in terms of conversations about border security. Even as a lib dem, fucking token lib, I'm not gonna deny that. And everyone at least says now, we need to have tight border security. It's, the situation under Joe Biden was untenable, these kinds of talking points. So with respect to people like overstaying, people abusing the system, the answer your political aisle has provided. Border security, border protection. But what you're not realizing sometimes when we have these different disagreements on areas of rights, whether it's the First Amendment, or you guys know the Second Amendment, when you start to make a little loophole for the Second Amendment, oh, no assault rifles. Well, what does that mean? Can they just define assault rifle to mean anything they want? Can they just define the Second Amendment that like arm just means whatever existed then? No. Yes, sometimes these rights will overprotect. The solution is, unfortunately, other policy decisions that don't infringe on the right.
Can I ask a Pisco question?
No.
Oh.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
It's a good try, though. Good try.
I have such a good one.
So I actually have one question for each of you also, real quick. Ryan, you made a comment earlier. I just need you to clarify it. I was trying to understand it. You were talking about the difference between someone who comes here and someone who is taken here, and you were trying to make a distinction between that. I didn't understand the point. What was this point?
So Pisco had made the argument that slaves who were illegally imported would be denied birthright citizenship under this rule in a hypothetical world where historically the dates lined up, which they don't. And the distinction that I drew there is that there is a difference in terms of analyzing the allegiance someone has to the country between a situation where the first act of that person is to violate our laws. If they cross the border illegally, and that's the first thing they do on purpose, that is somewhat different than someone being taken here against their will. And I don't think it's weird for the law to treat those situations differently.
Just real quick, in that case, are you saying that the law would say if you're taken here, you get birthright citizenship?
You get political allegiance.
Yeah. I think probably it would, but that would turn a little bit on the Wong King Art case that we didn't get into a lot.
And that you want to overturn.
The question would be whether the person has complete political allegiance to this country, which in the case of, for example, the freed slaves was obvious because it was like 5 generations deep. But in a case where somebody renounces it and they say, no, bring me home, that might be obviously the other way. I think it probably would be a case-by-case analysis rather than a line-by-line rule. But remember, Pisco's example was about slaves that were imported illegally and then were not freed for generations.
No, it's not. And this is such a great question that you asked because it means he must be wrong. That's a whole debate right there. And I'll tell you why. How can it be that a slave taken from part of Africa against his will, brought to the United States of America against his will, and he's off on the timing. Lincoln executed a slave importer in 1862. Look it up. They were importing slaves illegally for years. How can it be that an illegally imported slave against his will has political allegiance to the United States? It is absurd. All of you must reject it. That's the debate right there. An illegally imported slave brought into the country, of course, does not have political allegiance to the United States in the way you described. That would be an absurdity. That's the whole debate.
Think about the actual situation he's describing. This isn't a world where there's planes. This is a very dangerous ocean journey. Most people didn't survive it. Imagine a situation where this person is abducted, taken against their will, then they are freed by the laws of this country. They choose not to go back home because it's a long trip and they could die, and they say, yeah, I'd like to be American. That doesn't seem to me to be the same situation as somebody who is breaking our laws on purpose.
Do they have political allegiance? Do they have political allegiance?
Pisco, I gave you the answer
Okay,
earlier.
well, hold on. Let me call time. I apologize. I was just trying to ask a question.
You were interested, yeah.
But
it was a great question.
When I talk, this is how it goes.
It's good. No,
time.
it's good.
You
guys
see
did
us
great.
have coffee. It's a fucking nightmare.
It's fantastic. Listen, we're going to go again. WordWarDebate.com. If you have not voted, vote now here or in studio. You can go ahead and put that mic down, buddy.
We're done.
He's ready to say more. He's got more. Yeah. I'll tell you what, before you guys get off the stage, let's shake hands, and then we're going to kick it up to the analysts. Great job, guys. Thank you.
All right, guys, give it up for our debaters. I want to take a quick, we got to give it up for Pisco and Ryan stepping up at the last second and giving us an amazing debate. One more time for both debaters. And we also have to give it up for someone who made this whole thing possible, and that's our good friends at Wise Wolf Gold and Silver. Listen, guys, if you've been paying attention, you know that the de-dollarization is real, fiat is fake, and you don't want to be left holding the bag when the dollar collapses. Gold and silver have been money through all of recorded history and are an excellent way to protect yourself from inflation and geopolitical turmoil. That's why I trust my friends at Wise Wolf Gold and Silver for all things precious metals, okay? Veteran owned and A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau. No transaction too big or too small. You can even roll your 401k and IRA into physical gold and silver. And if you think you can't afford precious metals, think again. With the Wolf Pack monthly membership program, you can get gold and silver delivered directly to your house for as little as $50 a month. So what we need you right now is go to wordwardebate.gold at checkout and use the promo code WORD at checkout for free constitutional silver. And remember, in a world of bulls and bears, be the wolf. How great was that read? I crushed that. For
Well done.
For someone who's illiterate, I did a really good job, okay? So let's get into it, guys. What did you think, Gavin?
I think that these debates with left and right, there's a pattern here, and the left seems to always go into this ethereal, sort of magical world of what should be. And yes, in a perfect world, yes, if someone's born here, they should be an American citizen. That sounds great, and I agree with that. But the actual world we're living in today is abuse. And people are flying in, having babies, and leaving. We have to fix this. We have to fix this law. So I think Ryan won because he understood that no matter how good things sound on paper, in reality, something is being abused and we need to fix it.
Okay. What do you think, Kyla?
I mean, if the left's problem is that we try to appeal to the principles and philosophies that built America, I'll take that hit every single fucking day. When you look at debates like this, absolutely.
There we go.
America. Rah! Okay, when you look at debates like this, it's really important because there's a lot of nitty-gritty in this debate, right? And these are lawyers, which means both of them can talk circles around me on the law. And so when you're getting into the nitty-gritty, I think one of the things that's important to focus on as the listener is who's entertaining theatrics more. Because the person often who has to be more theatrical, who has to frame the meta of the conversation, who has to insist what their partner has or has not done, is usually the person who is probably more compelling, but also often more wrong, right? And so in the case of Mullally, he has incredible, I gotta say, Ryan, I don't know where you are, impeccable stage presence, truly. He's funny, he's interesting, he's verbose. The issue is that what he does is he will often address the audience. He'll tell the audience what they should think about Pisco's argument rather than letting the audience decide. And then he'll accuse Pisco of slamming the table and doing theatrics while slamming the table and doing theatrics.
Shots fired. I think it's very interesting. I think you both bring up some very good points. I think if we have this kind of idealistic law that lets everybody in, if you violate basic law here, should there be a penalty for that? If you're here, let's say you give you citizenship and then suddenly you go off and you commit some crazy crime, should there be a penalty for that?
There should be due process, right? And I think there is carve-outs where we do deport people who have violated certain laws.
Do you think illegals should have due process?
Yes.
Even if they're not citizens?
Yes. I think everyone who is in the country should have due process, because if you don't have due process, you have tyranny instead, and that is a worse world for everyone.
You know what? That's exactly what I'm talking about. That sounds great. And we should process everyone. But there's 50 million illegals in America. We don't have the infrastructure to process them all.
We have the funding. The immigration bill that got shot down because Republicans wanted to win the election this year was going to fund more judges and more border patrol, which would have processed these people faster. But you guys don't actually want solutions. You want to win elections. If you want to actually get more judges and get people through the system faster, you have to hire the staff to do it.
I don't want people through the system faster.
Of course we do, because we want to decide.
I want borders.
Well,
I want them out of here.
Well, then you need to address asylum, which is what the immigration...
is only like 340 million here. 50 million illegals. That's insane.
That's not a real number. But
we've got to get them that fuck out of here.
Then process them correctly, like
No,
through asylum.
don't process them.
Of course
No.
you have to process them.
Bye-bye. Go
But
leave.
you're an immigrant. You're an immigrant. You want to be processed
Yeah.
correctly. We're both
My-
immigrants.
Yeah, and like the system punishes those who follow the rules. I went through a green card, visas. It was a nightmare. Probably cost me 20 grand to get citizenship, and it's still not 100% complete. I'm constantly arguing with these people trying to get it done,
Yeah.
and I've been here for 25 years.
Yeah, it's almost like becoming illegal is actually really difficult not to do because the immigration process is so cumbersome and bureaucratic that even
punishes
good,
whites.
well-intending
It punishes
people,
whites,
it doesn't
let's be
punish whites,
honest.
it benefits whites.
Australians
Absolutely.
can't come here.
I had an easy
Europeans
time with my
can't come here.
immigration.
Mexicans
if
can
you want to talk about
meander
immigration,
across the border
the
and
left
they're
has
in.
all of the answers and it tried to do it in 2022
The left
and you guys
is a
shut
concept.
it down.
The left is a concept. The right is
The
reality.
right is a concept. What does this
Now
mean?
let me ask
Those are
you
just words.
something. Did we make a mistake allowing Somalians in?
No.
Really,
know
the
why?
pirate people? We let the
Absolutely.
pirate people
Do you
in.
know why we brought so many, we like expedited Somalis to
Why?
citizenship? Because we created a proxy war in Ethiopia between Somalia and Ethiopia that displaced and massacred millions of people.
Displaced.
And as a result of that,
Africa,
America was
dude.
like, oops, sorry for destroying your nation. Sorry for killing all of your government officials. I guess we'll bring you here and give you citizenship. That's what
So
happened
we
in the 80s
ruined
and 90s.
Somalia, but all the other countries around Africa are doing great. Africa's an irrevocable shithole. It cannot be repaired.
Well,
Every
I agree that
single
America's
country-
a shithole in a lot of ways,
Every
but why?
single country in Africa sucks except South Africa.
South
pre-apartheid.
Africa also kind of sucks, as most South Africans. They're
It
not
should
having a
just be
great
sunk
time.
into the sea. Let's be honest. Let's just push it down.
I would say, like, if you use a continent for proxy wars for like over 80 years, yeah, the place is going to be a shithole.
Proxy
And
wars? Come on. You think Somalia is meant to thrive? The average IQ there is 70. That's literally retarded.
as somebody who studies and researches IQ, you don't know what you're talking about. That's not even how you utilize IQ. You don't utilize IQ across countries.
You're not utilizing IQ right now if you're pretending that Somalia has a hope in hell. It's toast.
I imagine if we left them the fuck alone, they might actually erect a functional government eventually.
Perfect. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
It's
stop
this-
doing proxy wars.
It's
True.
this ethereal pie in the sky world where Somalia is thriving.
But if we do
Is that
go
pie in
in,
the sky to say leave Somalia alone?
if we do go into a country and just decimate it, do we owe them anything to give them a peaceful passage?
Decimate. All we do is provide infrastructure, medicine, roads. Colonization is charity. And I would like a thank you from all the countries we colonized over the years.
Well,
'cause
unfortunately, we
they
cut
improved
off
1,000,000%.
USAID, so
And then we
there's no
leave
thank
and they go,
yous.
look at Jamaica. Jamaica looked like fucking Manhattan when we were there. And then they got independence, and now what is it? Rebar, a boat on the side, a pile of garbage next to a fucking pile of shit.
Jamaica's dominantly filled with emancipated slaves. I don't even know what we're talking about. When did we own it? When did we have control of it? And when was
Britain
Jamaica's
ran
great
Jamaica
time?
until 1969, and it was thriving. And now it's a hellhole.
No.
Look
To-
at
to
Haiti.
look at Jamaica and think that it was thriving before 1969 is, I'm sorry, there's like, wasn't even proper due process for a lot of like
Oh
the
my
black
God.
citizens that lived
Look
there.
at the postcards of Kingston in 1965.
I'm sure if you were a white
will
person in
masturbate.
Jamaica, it might have been okay, but
I,
also
ma-
looks
I
creepy to go out on the
masturbate
street.
to postcards of Jamaica in 1965.
Okay.
The architecture
I will
alone.
not kink shame here. I will not kink shame.
I will.
So,
Stunning. Paradise.
let's. I know, Gavin. You said you thought Ryan won. Are you going with Pisco?
Yeah, I think at the like actual technical level that Pisco won. for sure.
Okay. Well, it's time to get into the voting, and the viewers voted, and they picked Ryan C. Mullally as the winner. There are no losers. There's only winners in this thing. So what we're going to do, we're going to give everybody a little break. We'll be back in about 10 minutes, and we have our second debate, Israel and allies. We'll get into that. Thank you for being here. We'll see you guys in about 10 minutes.